Hey everyone, this is Jason Long with Brainleaf, and tonight we're going to be talking about complexity in the application scoping and build process. And the reason we're going to talk about this is it's because so many people mess this up. Like so many people, when they're planning out the build of the project, they don't take into account the quadratic increase in complexity, the quadratic or exponential increase in complexity. And so they don't plan out the appropriate amount of testing time or project management time, and sometimes build time as well. And tonight I'm going to walk you through the kinds of things you need to take into account when you're planning these projects, when you're scoping them, when you're estimating them, etc. So you take into account the complexity variability. So here's the trick. It's really simple. It's the thing to think about. If you have two features, you got feature A and feature B, then you have a connection, and they're connected. Then you have a connection going this way and a connection going this way. So you've got, let's say, two connections. One in, out to in, out to in. So it's two ways, right? So two features, what was that? 4 connections. Now, if you've got 3 connections, then you've got 1, 2, 3. Now you've got to do the connection to each one of those things. If we just have, let's say we had sorry, my notes are right over here. Let's say we had 2 features and we just had 2 connections. With 4 features, we're going to have, 3 features, we're going to have 6 connections. With 4 features, we're going to have 12 connections. And with 6 features, we're going to have 30 connections. So that's really a lot more connections. And here's the piece that people forget about. If I change one of those features that has connections out to every one of those other features, I have to test every one of those connections, every single one of them. And then if I go through it, and if that connection from this feature to this feature affects something within this feature, then I have to test the connection between this feature and all the other features. So that might be testing APIs, that might be testing data moving around, that might be testing all sorts of things. And when you're doing this, people don't think about the testing time. Because what ends up happening is that the amount of time it takes you to test something in a reasonably complex system becomes more time than it takes for you to actually build the entire thing. A really good example is Brainleaf. When we edit one thing in that system, even a somewhat isolated piece, we have to go through and test the entire system. We have to test every single thing, or at least our critical protocols. And that is, if we don't have, outside of our automated tests, that is one person working at least 1 full day, sometimes 2 to 3 full days just to test. So the amount of time it took us to change that thing, that one isolated module or whatever it may be, would have been like, I don't know, 4 hours, maybe a day, maybe a little bit more. It depends. It really depends. Sometimes days or weeks to change module. But let's say you just applied one hotfix. If outside of our automated tests, to have an individual go through and do all those tests, 2 to 3 days, easy peasy. A full-time work testing every use case, every permission type, every user type, every major flow in the system. It's a lot of time. So when you're scoping a project, when you're scoping an application project, or even a little tiny project, you always have to remember the complexity, the quadratic or exponential increase in complexity as the number of features increases. And you have to therefore increase your testing and debugging time, or your quality assurance time, as well as your project management time. They have to increase to account for that complexity. And if you don't, you're going to end up behind budget with an upset client, and you're going to lose money. So don't let that happen to you. All right, don't forget your complexity. Make sure you're making money. Make sure you're planning your projects right. Make sure you're running your projects right. Hope this was helpful. Thank you guys so much. And if you want more on this one, if you go to learn-project-scoping, you'll see a whole section on complexity with all the graphs and all the charts and everything, and it'll show you how the whole thing is laid out. That's it. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.